Hi, I'm Chalk and ready to talk. I'm going to tell you about the Industrial Revolution. Let's go. A regular revolution is a bloody story where power changes hands in a region. The Industrial Revolution was different. Several inventions appeared in a short time and snowballed into massive changes across almost every part of life. All right, step by step. One of the most important inventions of that era was the steam engine, created by James Watt. Before that, pulling power came from animals, wind, or water. Now, production depended on outside forces. The next guy who made it big and really kicked industry into high gear was Edmund Cartwright. He improved the loom with a foot mechanism, boosting productivity 40 times. Factory owners were blown away and demanded that Cartwright be rewarded. In the end, Parliament paid him an amount £10,000 sterling, worth about $1.4 million today. Now the textile industry could keep up with growing demand. Textiles were all the rage. Briefly, by the 1830s, coal and cast iron overtook textiles as key economic drivers. Everyone realized trains were far cooler than horses, and railroads spread worldwide. It was such a massive process that historians call it the Transportation Revolution. Building railroads required enormous amounts of resources, people, and new technologies, but the cost was worth it. Soon, a trip from Paris to Marseille took just 14 hours instead of 112. Shipping also jumped on the wave. Sailing no longer depended on the wind. If a sailing ship crossed the Atlantic Ocean in about a month, a steamship could do it in a week. The transport revolution made science fiction real. What seemed like pure fantasy in Around the World in 80 Days became accessible to ordinary people just 16 years after its publication. Transport networks spanned the globe, and the global market expanded. Entrepreneurs didn't have enough personal money to build large-scale industries, so the first joint stock companies appeared, and loans became common. Industrialization gave a massive boost to finance and banking. Of course, this also affected ordinary workers. For example, they stopped being slaves and serfs. Not from kindness. Slavery was no longer profitable. Cities rapidly filled with factories growing like mushrooms everywhere. New professions appeared. Engineers, railroad workers, a division of labor that feels familiar to us today was born. One person could no longer do everything at once. You had to specialize in a single field. General assembly didn't exist then. Agriculture became a bit less central, but modernization didn't ignore it either. In the United States, for example, a cotton cleaning machine was developed that reduced dependence on slave labor. Reapers, threshers, livestock breeding, fertilizers, all of this increased efficiency. At the beginning of the century, on average, 4 farmers fed 1 city resident. By the end, 1 farmer fed 4 residents. Then, this steam-powered train of prosperity raced toward a cliff. In 1873, a crisis hit, and a new kind of crisis. If earlier disasters were caused by nature or wars, now the reasons were finance and industry. Responding to high demand, entrepreneurs produced more goods for quick profit, eventually going too far. Overproduction hit. Prices fell, companies went bankrupt, loans weren't repaid, stock markets collapsed, unemployment surged, and living standards dropped. And then, dirt, dust, and poverty returned. My grandfather said, every cloud has a silver lining. The economic crisis of 1873 became a turning point. Governments began protecting workers so they wouldn't end up on the streets and started regulating markets to stabilize the economy. For example, customs tariffs were introduced. In the late 19th century, an almost second industrial revolution began. Steel pushed cast iron out of traditional industries, raising standards of quality and durability. For the first time, energy could be transmitted over distances. Hi, Nikola Tesla. The chemical industry began the era of materials like plastic and aspirin. Pop a pill if your head is about to explode. The production of cars and airplanes continued the transportation revolution and helped spread new types of engines, diesel engines and internal combustion engines. In the end, the Industrial Revolution changed the world. Starting in Great Britain, it spread to the United States and then to other countries. And now, go check out my other videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.